Thank you for taking the time to return to my channel, Anthracite Horror Stories. Tonight, what you see in front of you, which is obviously fire and smoke, is the main ingredient that led to the tragic loss of 8 miners' lives in South Wilkes-Barre. I'm noticing a lot of fire, smoke, roof collapses were the majority of deaths that I'm seeing arise from just my quick research. It's very disturbing, especially in the 19th century when this accident occurred that I'm going to discuss tonight happened because the firefighting techniques were very primitive to almost non-existent. I'm getting a lot of my material from an online group called United States Mine Rescue Association. So please be sure to click my link in the description. They have great archives of newspaper clippings, mines inspector reports, and just general overviews of the disasters themselves. So again, be sure to click the description if you are interested. This story comes from the Daily Gazette and Bulletin out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, March 4, 1890, and is titled 8 Men Prisoners in the Pit. Wilkes-Barre, March 4, Associated Press. The fire in the South Wilkes-Barre mines is still burning. At 5 o'clock, a large portion of the roof of the tunnel caved in by reason of the burning away of the props. The air pumps are worked to their utmost capacity to ventilate the Staten mine, which adjoins and connects with the South Wilkes-Barre shaft. If the men reach the Staten mine, they may be alive, as the air there is good. In order to reach it, however, they had to travel over a mile from the place where they were working, and it is feared that they will be overtaken and are suffocated by smoke. Everything possible is being done by the mine officials to rescue the men. One of the city fire engines was put to work early this morning and is now pouring 2 large streams of water into the burning mine. The fire will cost a loss of over $100,000. The Lehigh and Wilkes-Barre Coal Company has been particularly unfortunate of late. Only a month ago, 7 men lost their lives in the company's mines at Plymouth. 5 of the men entombed last night are married, and unless they are recovered alive, they will leave 5 widows and 24 children. A report comes from the rescuing party in the Stanton mine that the air there is excellent, and that there is a possibility that the men are safe in one of the chambers. Up till shortly before noon, there was no apparent possibility of rescue of the 8 men entombed in the burning South Wilkes-Barre mine, or the recovery of the bodies until the mine has been flooded, which is now being done by means of several city fire engines. This will probably require a week or more. There is no change this afternoon in the situation at the burning shaft, and nothing has been heard from the exploring parties who are searching the Stanton workings with a faint hope of finding the missing miners lost in the maze of gangways. The steam fire engines are still pouring a flood of water into the burning mine, but they must still fill the workings to a height of 340 feet before reaching the fire. The situation remains unchanged this evening. One exploring party after another has descended the shaft only to be driven back by gas and smoke. The company's officials are now busy flooding the mine. Dense volumes of smoke are still ascending from the air shaft tonight, and the destruction in the interior of the mine will be enormous. At 8 o'clock this evening, the last exploring parties reports the fire is rapidly burning in the shaft and has made a headway of over 700 feet from the starting point of last night. All hope of finding the victims or any part of their bodies has been given up, as they have all probably been incinerated. That's insane. I mean, that's how the newspaper article ends. All hope is lost. They're incinerated. Can you imagine being a family member? About a day later, after this accident, you're reading in the local papers, hey, your loved one is incinerated. We have to fill the mine with 340 feet of water. That's astounding. If anyone's ever been in a mine, imagine that. To left, straight, right, and back of you, which, you know, could be miles on end, has to be flooded a total of 340 feet in elevation just to approach the spot where the disaster is, because they had to pump a lot of water out of the mines. Sometimes mines were 2,000 feet deep, and natural aquifers can begin, you know, as short as 30 feet, sometimes 90. I think like my aquifer is at like anywhere from like 190 to 230 feet out here for my well. But, you know, to have to pump 1,900 feet of water, that's crazy amount of energy. But that's what they were doing. They were pumping the mine, and this mine caught fire, and I'll explain here in a second as to how it caught fire. But then they would proceed to turn off the pumps and also pump water down to extinguish either the coal seam that was burning or the props or whatever was burning, just to flood the mine out, obviously to protect their investment firstly, especially back then, but usually lastly to rescue the miners. Unfortunately, you know, life was super cheap in the 19th century. Now, again, the United States Mine Rescue Association gave a quick description of this mine, and they said that this mine was very methane rich, unfortunately. And the footman and the driver, which would be like a mule boy in a sense, the footman would work at the bottom of the shaft. My great-grandfather, Mike Marciniak, was a footman at the Dorn shaft, and they would physically put the coal cars on the bottom of the cage, signal to the top hoist engineer to hoist the coal cars both up and down the shaft. Now, what's crazy about this is the footman stumbled, it says here, against the coal rib, where a large gas blower was issuing from the coal and was ignited from his open flame, which would be a flame safe, it would be a oil wick lamp. And that it caused this gas blower to ignite. Now, I think that obviously had something to do with the methane that was present in the coal seam. Somehow they were venting that methane up and out of the shaft. And not only did it catch this on fire, so it was like a blowtorch, it caught other gas blowers on fire. So they were like flamethrowers from this article, and they were running a current of 80,000 cubic feet of air per minute, which is insane. And this air was going inward, and when it caught fire, it was just blowing crazy amounts of smoke, and it was blowing towards the direction of these miners. So these miners are in their chambers mining, and all of a sudden, you know, this torrent of smoke and heat and chaos was enveloping them, and it sounds like they really were killed outright pretty quickly, because in the article it talks about the Stanton Colliery, and that they could have gotten to the Colliery. A mile sounds far, but it's not impossible. But it sounds like, you know, if they weren't killed instantly, they could not obviously reach safety because of the thick, dense volume. So you're hoping that they were overcome by the smoke, unfortunately. I hate to say that, but, you know, if they were trapped, they died a slow death because the smoke didn't get them. The water got them because they were flooding the shaft workings. And it says also here that the workmen were attempting to extinguish the flame of the gas blowers and the timbers and the coal catch on fire from primitive, they didn't say primitive in the article, but being 1890, fire extinguishers were primitive. They would have like a hand grenade looking clear glass ball in a sense, and they would throw this concoction which had chemicals in it, fire retardants, and that was about it. They didn't have, you know, modern fire extinguishers. They didn't have any type of halon system. no sprinklers. So unfortunately, fire suppression was literally at its infancy. So what a freak accident. Literally, a footman of the shaft, tripping, falling, his oil wick causing a methane flamethrower to go off, catching timbers on fire, catching the coal seam on fire, probably catching part of the shaft on fire, the ties, maybe coal cars, and the ensuing heat and smoke just killed those gentlemen. And they had to flood out the whole mine. The mine was closed for months, the website states. I guess they did not find any of the bodies of the men because the newspaper article said, well, they're incinerated, that's it. The adjoining colliery, the Stanton Colliery, you can see, like I said, I think I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I've done a couple takes on this, but Solomon Recycling in South Wilkes-Barre by the one bowling alley. I can't remember the name of the bowling alley. It's Stanton Lanes, named, you know, for the Stanton section of Wilkes-Barre there. Has a lot of the colliery buildings. They have the lamp house there, the mule, I don't know if it was a mule barn, but it was something with the mules. I talked to the owner a few years ago. The one payroll building, and just a few of these really, really awesome early 1900s era, late 1800s era, classic anthracite colliery buildings in the anthracite fields. And they were almost very European in nature, very Germanic, very French looking of, you know, the mining design at the time, because the Europeans did lead the way in a lot of the headframe technology, ventilation, shifting shanties, which were wash houses. But these buildings are pretty immaculate. They're painted white. And just go drive in South Wilkes-Barre there, Google Solomon Recycling, and you can see for yourself the old buildings. They're boarded up, the windows, but aside from that, they're immaculately painted white. The roofs are all taken care of. If you look hard enough, you could probably even see the old Stanton vertical shaft cap, which would be there. If you talk to the owner, he might even let you walk around the premises to take photos, as I did about 1.5 years ago. It's very sad that, you know, the article talked about 24 orphan children and 5 widows. Who knows what happened to them? Often these children incurred the deaths of their parents, and that's not even myth. It's actual historical fact. Coal companies were pretty vulturistic in their mannerisms, and these children often were approached by the coal company and said, hey, your father who died owed this, you can come work for us. So it was essentially indentured servitude. I'm sure that went on well into the 20s, definitely around World War I that was going on. So I don't know what happened with this Lehigh and Wilkes-Barre coal mine. I assume that they obviously drained it and that they would retimber it, fix the cave-ins. Probably didn't look for the deceased miners. If they came across them, they would have, you know, sent them up the shaft, obviously, but they probably didn't look too hard for them because they wanted their capital returned. So they would pump the water out, fix the mine up, and went back to mining like nothing ever happened. And that was just the reality of late 1800s, early 1900s anthracite coal mining. And unfortunately, the Stanton Colliery had its own share of disasters, I'm noticing. In this article, they talked about what a safe mine it was and how it was expertly ventilated. But I'm seeing, like, all collieries. No collieries were exempt from these disasters. Stanton had its share of disasters, so we'll be chronicling those in future posts. So be sure to comment, subscribe if you haven't, and thank you for watching this video.